Good. How are you?
You look like an MTV reality show. Should I read my first question?
Sure.
Yeah, let's get into it.
I'm going to read it out loud. If you could build, I like this question. If you could build a museum about democracy in Philadelphia, what would you call it and who would lead it? Wow.
I would call it the Pioneers because Philadelphia is the city that pioneered our independence and our nation, so I would call it Pioneers.
Do you ever thought about who would lead it?
I guess the Eagles, because I'm a big fan.
Okay, clearly it's got to be Jason Kelsey. So I think we have some really great museums in Philadelphia already. You know, Museum of American Revolution, National Constitution Center, you know, both of those really are about the foundation of our democracy and how we each continue it every single day. So I think building off of those themes and developing the area around the National Mall in where Independence Hall is would be really important for Philadelphia.
I think I would love to see something that was only focused on freedom movements. Like, I think that would be an interesting experience that could be, you know, evergreen, you know, looking at how those things have cropped up in the country. We could do occasional spotlights of how other countries have struggled with democracy. And I think one of the things that challenges democracy most is that we don't know how hard we've had to fight for it from a really wide lens. So I'd like to see a museum that really captures the, you know, what those movements required by, you know, sacrifice. And so leaders,
Comparative government kind of.
I'm even thinking like, what would it look like when it comes to, you know, Marsha P. Johnson and what she contributed to our notions of queer history and the movement to move towards more, you know, a more democratic position on what it means to be in the world from that perspective. Like a Black Panther Party exhibit? What would it mean to look at, you know, even what's happening in contemporary movements around the preservation, advancing of democracy? I think that'd be fun. Yeah. So just give me $10 million. Let's go.
Is it Philly? I like that too because we talk so much about democracy during elections, but like the real work of democracy happens kind of all the other times, right? And it's by leaders who run movements like that who really push it forward. So Philadelphia is the mural capital of the world. We have some 4,000 murals, and unlike some other cities who have mural programs, ours is community-led, right? So murals throughout different neighborhoods and different communities are often created with the communities that live there, and they tell the story of our city. We have the largest public arts program, but we don't have a museum about it. So maybe there should be some museum about how art in the form of public art created with community is a form of democracy.
Yeah.
And I'll lead it.
Yeah, there you go. Done. You're hired.
How does social media play a role in democracy?
What is it called again? Social media? What is that?
Lies and fairy tales.
Well, social media, it's really the modern town square.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where people are going to talk to other people, to get their news. It's important to meet voters where they're at. So even though we see the problems with social media that are potentially there, ultimately it's the easiest way to communicate directly to voters where they're paying attention, especially the younger generations.
You know, I think every election in my lifetime, it's been different. And I think, you know, there might have been a time where it was the town square, but they're all algorithm based now. They're all driven off of strong emotions. So it's not sort of even necessarily popular opinion, but just what opinion will draw the most emotion out of people so that they share it, so that they look at it longer, and then the algorithm pushes it out. So, you know, I mean, I think that's a huge conversation just across the board about what it's doing to our society. The truth is we just don't know, right? Like, it'll, 100 years from now, we might be able to look back and have some better understanding of how it changed our society for the better or for the worse. Certainly, it's helped people find other people who have similar points of view and create protest movements that could kind of burgeon. But it's also divided us in so many ways. I mean, I think it's like anything. There's pluses and minuses, but it seems really algorithm focused right now, which is.
Take a look at the conventions, though, as an example. Like, most people, the average American, is not staying up until midnight watching the full speeches of every single speaker. But they are seeing clips of it and snippets of it, you know, whether on TikTok or Instagram or somewhere else. And that's really where they're getting their information from.
But they're only seeing it, I think, through the lens that informs their existing position versus pushing them to actually have a more nuanced understanding of another position. And that's where the idea of it becoming a town hall or a watering hole kind of falls apart. And that it seems as though the algorithms are set up actually to feed more division than like compassion. And so I don't know
Or even
that
understanding, yeah.
Yeah, or even understanding, right?
You
Depth
never
of
hear
knowledge.
the other side. You never hear anything.
And even if you were to hear something by way of like a soundbite, reductive position, that's not enough information for you to actually move along a spectrum of understanding. So I think that the role that it plays is obvious. It does draw our attention and it holds our time.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's fueling the kind of, critical thinking, critical listening that is really at the heart of whether or not we can make this democracy last another 250 years.
And what's like credible, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that
many people put out like false information that's not accurate to, prove their narrative. So it's just like, what can you really trust? But I do think social media is an awesome community-based tool. It really helps, people connect and find, their people, especially if you're in an area where you might not be able to connect with people. So I do think it can be an awesome tool. I just don't know if society as a whole has caught up with managing it. I don't know.
I mean, half of this is going on social media, so.
All right, so this is, I think, a nice extension. When you live in a democracy, it's easy to take it for granted. How can we fix that?
Connecting with people that may not be like you. So just, going out of your comfort zone, hearing other people's stories and opinions, I feel like it'll really, help open to your mind to, new possibilities and just new ways of life. I know for me, when I was like coming out, my parents didn't accept me right away, but, I stayed in my truth and I continued to like live my life, and eventually they came around.
I think if we see how we have 50 different states and jurisdictions that have different laws that are being passed, and then the impacts of those laws on people, somebody who lives in one state and seeing what's happening in another can start to appreciate the value of their vote in their own state and see how, if their views are not being represented, what the potential future could look like. So being, little bastions of democracy in their own ways, I think can help people appreciate the value of democracy in their own, life.
I mean, I certainly feel the way about Pennsylvania right now. Like, I'm so happy that I don't live in a state where my rights as a woman will be compromised in completely different ways. So I think that that's an important part. I think, too, I was a teacher for almost 20 years. I still teach, technically. And I think about how so often we have never studied tyranny, like we haven't studied dictatorships in other places. So it's easy to take for granted the protections that democracy gives when you don't know how bad it can be in other places. I think one thing that we have to think about doing differently, and again, it does go back to kids for me, but really for all of us, how do we differently understand what's actually on the line? Because I don't think we fully have an appreciation for what could be taken away, like what's actually under attack, what's under threat.
I think for me, I look at it because I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised here in the United States, but then I have family in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is the Commonwealth of the United States. However, they don't have the same rights as we do. They can't vote.
Right.
So whatever goes on, like they really don't have a say on what goes on with any of the systems of government there or with the education. So for instance, what just happened, a hurricane just hit them. And right now, Luma is the electric company that basically controls the island. And that has been an issue for God knows how many years. It's been a broken record. And the people have been fighting, where here you can get it within a couple of days. It's been over a week.
Wow.
And there's no change. It's like as if they don't have a say. And that's why a lot of Puerto Ricans from the island start moving here more and more, because they know they have more rights here on the mainland than what they do on the island, which sucks. Because they're leaving their homeland, they're leaving their history, their culture, everything that they know behind to come here just to get some form of freedom.